Awesome. Thank you. All right. My name is Adrienne, and I'm on the board of YNPN Phx, and I am so excited for this session. In this session, we'll be talking about how to maintain boundaries while working from home. I know that's a new reality for a lot of us. And I'm even more excited for our presenter today, Paloma Ibanez. I'll read her amazing bio. Paloma has one DC burnout, another Phoenix burnout, and a travel sabbatical under her belt. So she knows all about balance and strives someday to achieve it, or maybe not. In the meantime, she's riding the wave, being kind, making the world a better place, one voter registration at a time, and living life as intentionally as possible with River the dog, Pond the cat, and Zachary the human in Tucson. She's also the program director at One Arizona. I'm gonna be here to help Paloma manage questions as they come through the chat. Otherwise, I will send it to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Adrienne. It's so lovely to see you. I worked with Adrienne once upon a time, and I dream of the day where I get to work with you again. Everyone, it is wonderful to see all of your names in a tile formation. I hope you're having a really good day. I'm going to share my screen in just a moment, but while you see my face, I just want to do a quick check-in. I imagine all of you have giant hearts. You work for nonprofits. You're here today. I'm coming to you tired, a little brokenhearted. I also feel really strong. I've been organizing for a couple decades now, and so I think we're in a really special moment. I've never experienced a response like this, and the conversations I've had in my personal life are really heartening. So if you have a moment, I would just love for you to type in the chat box, kind of like an emoji. I don't know how to do emojis on my computer in chat yet. Maybe you do if you're younger than me. But just kind of get a feel for how you all are feeling. I would love to see that in the chat box while I kind of go into what we're doing. I also want to invite you all throughout as I'm talking, if we were in person, yeah, I can relate to that one. If we were in person, this would be much more conversation. I'd have a lot more call and responses. And so I'm just gonna kind of roll with it. I might invite you a couple times to kind of give me your feels in the chat box. That would be lovely to hear from you all. And then I will share my screen and hope that I do it so you can't see my notes. I've practiced. So Adrienne, will you confirm that you can just see my slide and not, oh, I did it wrong. I want to do presenter view. Can you just see my slides? And not my, I'm gonna assume. Oh,
Paloma,
no.
we can see Paloma. It's Jesse, right? I'm on the board too. I think Adrienne's frozen, so I'm going to tell you that we can see just your slides, but also your face at the top on mine.
Oh, cool. Cool.
I got booted out, but I'm back. And yes, we can see.
Sweet. So kind of just a quick conversation what we're going to go through. My presentation to you today has adapted over the last week. I had a lot of snarky and sarcastic and funny screen captures off Instagram that just don't feel authentic to me right now to talk about, because constantly I'm just feeling overwhelmed a little bit. So it's a little bit serious tone. I had to adapt it really quickly, but I think that's a boundary I had to draw for myself, and I did. And I'm really happy to model that with you. I will talk about expectations, and two of my favorite kind of tools to use in teams are the 4 tendencies and the one thing. And then if we have time, I'd love to kind of have help breaking you out into pairs to kind of just talk about like the one boundary you've been thinking about that you'd like to help draw for yourself. A little bit more about me. As I mentioned, this moment is significant for me. Adrienne mentioned my bio, not really wanting to achieve balance. I should probably explain that. It's not that I don't want to be a balanced person. I don't philosophically believe that balance is something you achieve. It's something you are. And that it's not just this evening of scales, that it's a fluid dynamic thing. So it's not an achieve, it's a state of being. And so I also am really happy to bring in my grandma, my abuelita, that into this. She is, if you watch the movie Roma on Netflix, that was a big part of my grandmother's story, and it was quite amazing to see that on film. For her time and her culture, she has always been a very assertive woman and very much the matriarch. And I'm very glad that I've got an expression that looks like her. And she definitely smiles. She just doesn't have teeth, so she doesn't like to. But when she met Zachary, I think she thought she might have a great grandchild, and we haven't done that for her. But we're getting there. And a little bit more about me, these two quotes are really what ground me in all of my work. I think the function of freedom is to free others. And a really big part of like how I've shown up in the world and how I'm going to invite you to draw boundaries for yourself is like, you can't be what you can't see. And so if you want boundaries, you have to do them. And by doing that, the function of it is giving permission to do that as well. And if we were in person, I'd love to do like a moment on community norms. Since I'm kind of just talking at you at the moment, I'm going to invite my favorite one in, which is being comfortable, being uncomfortable. I think with the moment that's going on, and if you are committing to being anti-racist at this particular moment, we're going to spend the rest of our lives being uncomfortable, unlearning the things that we have learned. And so kind of that's my headspace right now. And then to jump straight into things, the perks of being a toddler. I don't have kids of my own, but I've grown up around little ones. My mom was a family childcare provider in her home, so she had up to 4 kids in her house. When she first started, she was open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and families definitely need care all those times. And so almost 30 years later, when she retired on a Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 4:30 schedule, and she quickly learned in her profession about the importance of drawing boundaries, and especially with little ones. And so I think she should be a consultant right now. I think this would be a really good market for her. If any of you need toddler advice, she's available. I think she's bored at home. And my mom, oh my goodness, she's an amazing woman. Definitely, I mean, teenage years, we definitely butt heads. Don't worry, I'm realistic about our relationship. But she could get kids to nap and use the potty and eat green foods. And when parents would ask, like, how do you do that? My mom would talk about boundaries, and some of their eyes would glaze over, and some others would like embody those. And little kids, she always talks about this to this day, is that little kids really like boundaries because it's security. And so can you imagine not knowing anything about the world, and all of it's big and scary, and they're always having to learn and adapt. And so when we bring boundaries to their life, it brings security and that stability. And the other thing, one of the funny screenshots that I kept in here is, I really love this, that little kids don't have filters. They haven't learned decorum or politeness. Those things aren't built into our behavior. It's something we socially learn about how we should behave and how we should show up in spaces. And so little kids are really good at communicating. They are expert communicators. They tell you exactly when something's wrong, if they're hungry or frustrated. Oftentimes it's crying, and it's universal, and you get to decode what kind of cry is that one. But they don't sit there and be like, oh, I'm not okay, to the point where you have a break. Like me, when I had my burnouts, I kind of just kept taking things and didn't communicate how stressed out I was or what my challenges were, and kind of let it go to the boiling point, to where I was like, oh, I can't do this anymore. So I really admire little kids because they don't do that. They let you know right away. And so we all still have an inner toddler. Those functions of wanting security and direction, they don't go away when we grow up. We just learn to figure it out ourselves, or we create really good or really bad coping mechanisms. And right now, all of us are in a really hard moment. We had that global pandemic. At least for me right now, it feels like democracy is crumbling. I work in civic engagement. I won't be doom and gloom, but oh my goodness, it's just, there's so much. And I just want to be scooped up in my mom's arms, and I want her to tell me it's going to be okay, except I can't hug her right now because I don't want to accidentally give her the plague. So it's hard, and some of us don't have parents, and some of us aren't living with family. So right now, our inner toddler is screaming, but we are all adults and composed and showing up to work and kind of moving through the functions and doing the best that we can. I think this is the moment for us to recognize our inner toddler and saying our best that we can is going to be different right now because we're all in this difficult moment together. And so this is like my little PSA to say a reminder that we are more than our productivity. Kind of who we are as people matters more in the moment. We'll get into that. But kind of like this inner toddler, how we're responding to the situation we're at. I'm sure many of you know about the amygdala. I'm fascinated by this part of our brain. I am by no means a neuroscientist or psychologist or I'm into cognitive behavior, but I'm not trained in it whatsoever. I just like to read. And I'm really curious about why we do the things that we do. I would love to figure out the formula that allows humans to be comfortable being uncomfortable, because I really think that's where change happens, where we grow as a society to build a community that's, you know, based in equity and peace. Right now, starting with being anti-racist in my life, but it's really hard because our whole brain and mind is wired for survival. And so it's put the amygdala, this little gray matter, middle, the bottom of our head, in charge. And the amygdala perceives uncertainty, volatility, ambiguity, and unpredictability as if we were facing off with actual lions, tigers, and bears. So change brings uncertainty and volatility with it. So our automatic reaction of survival is triggered. Our acute stress or fight or flight mode that we all know and hear about, but that trigger sends new chemicals through our bodies, and those chemicals have consequences, and they increase stress levels, which in my case, had my dream job, loving life in DC. And one morning I went to work and I was like really stressed out. I had a one-on-one with my boss who I really hated. And, you know, we all talked about how much we hated her, but there wasn't collective action. There wasn't, we didn't have two-way evaluations. There wasn't really an HR to talk to. And it was just a really stressful situation. And so I'm on my way to work and I text a coworker. I'm like, can you meet me at the bus stop? Like, something's not right. And I didn't make it to that bus stop. I had a seizure on the bus a few blocks from the White House on Valentine's Day. I was dressed up really cute. Ended up running to the EMTs later. That's a different story. But stress has a real consequence in our bodies. I had a tumor that grew to the size of an apple that was fed by stress. And so I'm really an expert on the effects of stress. And I'm here to tell you your amygdala is responsible for that. And so right now, if you're feeling exhausted and shitty and just not yourself and it's hard to do anything, it's not you, it's your amygdala. It's a part of you. So it's we're in a really important time to be kind to ourselves. I'm gonna move, I keep looking down because my face is down there and Adrian's just disappeared. Sorry. So just a reminder, kindness is really, really key right now. And that I think the harder, more dramatic piece about this is that we're all feeling this. So usually it's like maybe a random person on your team feels this every day. You know, there's something that triggers them that makes them feel this fight or flight. But right now it's everyone on your team on most days. And so just, I think bringing awareness to kind of where we're at, where our headspace at is really important. And, you know, building a place of boundaries and kind of defining those lines is really to understand the moment we're in and understanding the chemical and brain functions that are behind it. And then, so I shared that I had this really stressful experience in DC. And I can tell you that your amygdala doesn't always have to be in charge. I have over the last, that happened 11 years ago. So over the last 11 years, I've really built a practice. It's not perfect by any means, but that really gives me an extra moment. I ask myself, is it real or not real? And now in Peta's voice. So, and it's the best boundary I've ever drawn for myself. And when I'm in a meeting, just yesterday, we were in a meeting and I think we have an upholder on the team. We haven't done 4 Tendencies, so I'll talk about that in a little bit. But they're like, oh yeah, we have to do this Sunday. And then I was just thinking that I didn't say anything. I wasn't ready to say anything yet. And I have given myself permission to take time and then come back to a topic. It's been hard doing that, but I am really comfortable doing that now in meetings and in any situation. And came back to that and really was like, do we have to do it Sunday? And so a past Paloma would have panicked and would have thought we had to do that. We have to do that this Sunday evening. So we have to do a brand new presentation. We have to work on Sunday and train a whole new group of people, make this happen. But I'm now in a point, and that's time and experience for me that got me there. But to pause and ask, is this real? Is this urgency necessary? And is my reaction, is this a fight or flight moment, or is this something that I have reason, control, planning abilities around? And so it is possible to build, our brains are elastic, so we can build those pathways for us. It really comes with intentionality. And this is by no means, your fight or flight is really key and important. You should listen to it. There are definitely moments like creepy dude crossing your path, fight or flight, definitely stick to those things. But in work settings particularly, most likely you are physically safe and it's a moment of discomfort, and there's a thinking pattern through there that you can practice. And Thich Nhat Hanh is the Buddhist leader that I kind of connect to the most. His practice, his websites, I have links here, has been really an important part in kind of cultivating mindfulness and how I show up in the professional setting, but really how I show up for myself and as a human, and my human self goes to work. And it's a whole other conversation, but I really want to plug it here, is that mindfulness is a really important tool to listen to your inner toddler. Like, do you need a nap? I get mad at Zachary, the love of my life, but I'm usually hungry. I have legit hunger, and we all have those things. And so bringing awareness to it. So when you start to feel that and you're getting snippy, I'm getting snippy at Zach. It's like, am I mad at Zach or am I hungry? Do I need a granola bar? And so it sounds really cheesy, but this is really the things I do on a day-to-day basis. And I can tell you, I'm much happier rather than going down the path of picking a fight. So the other thing I want to plug here too is your love language. Again, I'm really going to emphasize care and self-care and taking care of each other, and making sure you know what yours is. And it might be a combination of these, and it could be different between if it's a romantic partner or a friendship partner. But in drawing boundaries, we also get to invite things into those. And so if you realize, hey, I need more quality time, or I need to buy myself flowers because I'm alone in my studio apartment and I have nothing else to look at, or adopt an animal, whatever it is, the more mindfulness we bring to what we do, I think just the stronger people we become, and that shows up in how we work. And I think this is my last kind of preachy slide, and then I'll get into more tangible tactics. But I think, again, reiterating this moment we're in, and I think particularly for our Black community, I know for me, I've always kind of been in social justice, and I've always kind of been an activist, and I, have been at rallies where we've been shot at and tear gassed in the past, and it doesn't feel new. And I know for Black people, it's not new, but a lot of us are being invited into a space that's new, and that's really hard. And what we're seeing, and as our white allies and our people of color that aren't Black, we are experiencing and seeing something that our friends have been living through for their entire lives. And that's really heavy stuff, and it's trauma. And I'm going to uplift my friend Andy Fetzer, who I think has been involved with YNPN when she was in Phoenix. I think she's California part-time based now, but she started Origins Training and Consulting that leads in trauma-informed care. And it has a lot of, their website is linked, and I'll share this presentation with you all. It has a lot of resources because trauma is a real thing. They're saying that DNA has memory now, and trauma carries through generations. So what we're experiencing is a significant moment, and something for us to all be mindful of as we move through the workspace. So we're gonna talk about setting up like Slack communication things, but always in the back of our mind when we bring in, if we're getting frustrated with someone on Slack, bringing in this piece of humanity that people aren't necessarily doing things to hurt us intentionally. Everyone's just kind of hurting right now. So expectations to me is on the other side of the same coin of boundaries. When we know what's expected from us, uncertainty and is removed. And so our amygdala stays home, and we really can react with our rational brain to change. And so knowing what expectations are helps you set boundaries. It allows you to respond to something rather than react to it. So I think in the work setting, being super explicit, especially right now, is one of the most important things we can do. And then I also link a couple of resources. I'm sure all of you are familiar with the Management Center, but they have a great COVID-19 page of resources. They have their usual managing up trainings available, which I think we don't do enough in nonprofit sectors. Our associates and coordinator levels aren't being taught how to manage up. And I think the more we can invite that into our nonprofit sector, the better, because if we're all better managers, the work gets done more efficiently. And what's wrong with that? So I think the biggest thing for us to do now is to just shift expectations. I'm sure a lot of you have done that, and maybe I'm sure haven't. Things aren't going to be the same output, the same kind of traits and kind of norms your group has set up may not work anymore, and we have to shift the expectations around what those look like. So your check-ins, your one-on-one conversations, your team meetings, it's really time. I don't have a separate slide for communication, because communication to me is really ingrained in every category that we're going to talk through. And so, yeah, so we can't be, sorry, we just got a delivery and my dog may or may not flip out. She might be asleep. So a couple things I want to say here too is one of the issues that was raised when I was planning this presentation is like setting boundaries of hours. And so I think if you're the manager, it's really hard as you're new. I didn't do it when I was young in my first career, my first nonprofit job in DC. I thought I had to be on it all the time. And that was kind of the culture we were in. And looking back now that I have all this experience, I can say it's not. And you have a role in setting that up for yourself. But there are things you can do to kind of honor others people's time as you're defining yours. Your team may respond really well, and you all may say, we've got these hours. Let's all collectively right now set up our Slack, reminders to be these hours. And your team might not respond that way. You might have a boss or someone who keeps sending you messages. And so, there's tools you set up for yourself to block those, but also a way to honor other people's time is if you're working outside of hours, schedule your emails. Don't send them, at 9 p.m. at night, schedule them for the next morning. It can be a two-way street there. My next thing is just plan everything. I'm at Javelina when I worked there. We were really kind of building the organization as we were going, and we created a system for creating systems, and that was kind of our starting point. I think the rebels rebelled, and I know I rolled my eyes once, but it ended up being the best thing that we did. All the front end planning work you really do get out on the back end. And the other thing here too is that when you're planning out little decisions and those things together as a group or intentionally, when you eventually get to like the actual work, you've saved energy. And so our brains consume the most amount of energy of any part of our body or being or thinking. So every small decision you can eliminate or pre-plan, so it's not actually part of the work, so you're not doing both things at the same time. You're saving yourself energy, capacity, and another thing that was mentioned is like, how do you prepare, like struggling with slow days or things that are slammed. And I would say for slow days, you have a lot of control over that, because you can shift your expectations and just expect you're going to have slow days and know to build out time and space. Are there bigger projects? Does your organization need a system on system? Can you do some readings, or is that a good time for self-care? And then I think the days when things come in and you are like, there are 10 things you just sent me at once because we just heard back from someone, is a system for prioritization. Our organization at different times had efficient systems set up for that. Is like, how do you know which one's a priority? And so having those conversations on a regular, reoccurring basis is really, really important, and really just helps with your overall culture. And also the culture of like instant is something we have to shut down. An email sent, setting up those, do you have 24 hours to respond? Like really being direct and forthright, as we all know, and it's easier said than done, but really saying, okay, I'm going to get back to you. I often like responding and saying, saw your email, I'm going to get to this tomorrow morning, and just being clear with my time. So someone knows I've seen it. They're not wondering what's happening. They've got that closure security, and they know their question's going to be answered in a timely manner based on my prioritization. And so those are little systems we can set up for ourselves. And then a big piece for me in my 20s, I was a giant ball of stress in DC. And I really, looking back and kind of all my meditation and reflection, is that my identity was intertwined to my work. I was my work. My productivity defined me. I got 2 promotions. I was always trying to be the best. I had a challenging boss. My ego was involved. And so when work was a mess, my whole world was a mess. So even though I had great friends, a really fun social life, I was involved in other things, the thing that I defined my success was wrong. So I wasn't successful. And so I think if that resonates with any of you, one of the things, if this is the boundary you need to draw for yourself, is to take the time to define what success is. So it's just a free write exercise. The first things that pop into your mind, write it down, and you have time to look at it, think about it. Is it exactly right? Do you need to post it and remind yourself? Or success right now at the moment, just getting out of bed or changing out of your pajamas. Like, that's okay. Define what success is and make that part of you, because then you're really giving yourself permission to show up how you want to show up. And if what you write down isn't what you want to be, it also gives you a starting point in how and what you need to do in setting those boundaries to achieve that. And so Slack, I think most of us are on Slack. If you're not on Slack, I apologize. I think Slack is one of the tools that really can set us up to be really effective communicators and establish those boundaries. Last night, I normally have Do Not Disturb go on my phone. For some reason, it wasn't on last night. And so I had 2 colleagues who were slacking back and forth between 7:30 and 9:30 trying to figure out a script on a dialer. And it's like, wow, I'm really stressed out. This bothers me. And so it's not on me to get on them. It's on me to set up my own boundaries and turn my Do Not Disturb back on. And other times it may be, if you are the manager and you've got 2 associates who are working late at night, that's a signal to you that they are perhaps under the expectation that that's required of them, that something is such a priority that is needed of them. And as managers, we really have to watch that, because I know what I when I was young and starting out, I wanted to please and I wanted to get everything done really well. So another important mindful piece. Zoom, you can look at some of these bullet points when I send it out, but the big thing is like, do you need to have a meeting? Meetings are really important right now. And so when you're planning our meetings, really setting clear goals and expectations and grounding it in why you're having this meeting, what does this matter, is super important to communicate and really be mindful of people's time, because we're all reading articles about Zoom fatigue and Zoom burnout, and it's really true. But first, a couple weeks ago, it's like, I'm fine. Now I'm like, oh my God, I'm so tired. Today I've turned my Zoom camera off because I couldn't be visually on, and we're missing something in our communication by not reading each other's visual cues, and it's hard. So it's really important to be strategic when we do make our meetings right now. Oops, oh dear. I don't know what I did. Time management. I lost my notes. So time management, oh my gosh, this is everything. Those of you who use Toggle are groaning right now. I know I did when I had to use Toggle, but I think the most important thing for me, those are out of order. Quick, is Toggle is being mindful of your mind and your energy. So when we first started using Toggle at Javelina, it was like, oh my God, doing this thing takes hours. And then you toggle it and you're like, oh, that was 25 minutes. But all of the mental energy that went into dreading that thing that you didn't want to do is really the suck. So that may be the boundary that you needed to define for yourself. That may be the thing that you need to work on. I hope all of you have or will get the chance to do Gretchen Reubens for Tendencies. It is an incredible resource. It's a personality questionnaire quiz that goes into kind of just one facet of our natures and how we meet expectations, both external and internal. And this tool helps it heavily. Now we're just starting to dive into it at One Arizona. It really understands how we set up our work. And, you know, whether you're the manager, the person launching a product, are you getting everyone the information they need to do the work that they need to do? And are you understanding each other's behaviors? And so I cannot recommend Gretchen Reubens for Tendencies enough. And then the last, oh no, now I've really done it. Oops. There was a delay. Oh, I'm old. The one thing, a guy wrote this, he's a super capitalist. He interviewed a bunch of CEOs and boiled down that success is because people focus on one thing at a time. And I could not agree more. And I spend time at the end of my day planning out my next day. And I always know what's like the one thing I have to do. And that really organizes my energy in an efficient way. And I really skimmed the book, but there's really some good philosophy in there. And I am a person who procrastinates and puts off the thing I don't want to do last, the one that feels like it's going to be the hardest. But when I make a list of one thing, it's really hard to avoid it. And I definitely become much more efficient. This is my shout out to any managers. In this moment, if you haven't sent out a staff survey to see how your people are doing, it's time to do that. I'm happy to share the one we drafted and the resources that helped us figure out how to ask the questions. And so I think this is really vital. Knowing how your people are doing right now, super important, and evaluating how you're doing your check-ins is a really key time to help set up those boundaries and kind of lead there. And also managees, if you aren't having check-ins, it's okay to ask for them. And self-evaluations, I know things are really different. Just checking in on your systems. Are people knowing right now, going back to clear expectations, are you giving people feedback on how they're doing? I know during this, I never had a conversation. I'm in a new role. I've only been there 6 weeks now. But previously, no one was like, oh, you're doing really, there was no check-in. That just kind of disappeared because we were remote. And so really following up on that, making sure we're checking in on people is important. And then self-care, you all know this. This is, you know, putting on the oxygen mask before you put on someone else. You all know this. The other thing I really loved is I put on read receipts on my text messages so I can be more accountable through this, because I definitely, on Marco Polo, it's like, oh, you sent me a message 7 days ago. I'm so sorry. And we shouldn't apologize for that. If that's what we need to recognize that in our friends. And so make up an emoji or a GIF that communicates that. We don't need microbursts of shame. There's enough stuff that we have to deal with. Let's take care of each other there. Empaths, I really feel for you in setting boundaries as an obliger. It's incredibly challenging, but it is really possible. And then Adrian, I know I kind of went over time. I don't know if we have time for breakouts, but what I'd love for you all to do is, throughout all my yapping at you and you showing up to this workshop in the first place, what's one boundary you want to reinforce, and thinking about how can you be held accountable to that. And then we can come back and have time for Q&A. Well, everyone, are there any other questions, any report outs? Does anyone how do we feel about boundaries now? Do you feel ready to set new ones? Draw it hard in the sand?
It was encouraging to hear that my two partners had similar, like, like concerns that I did. They really identified with my boundary. And they also made me think like maybe it's unreasonable to, because my boundary was sticking to a strict 9 to 5 schedule, but maybe that's unreasonable now when, you know, our work ethic is just completely changed. So maybe that means that my strict 9 to 5 schedule needs to change too, allowing for more breaks in between stuff, or just like, you know, weaving in personal life stuff, like taking care of like my home or taking care of my or my friends.
Yeah. No, I think so.
Mhm.
Yeah, we all get to shift. Big fan of breaks, Liz. Totally there. I really like my Fitbit because it buzzes at me every 10 minutes. I don't know if you are Fitbit people, anything like that buzzes you, reminds you. In my slides, I got a couple, there's a Chrome extension, eye care, that kind of blocks out your screen and makes you like look away and take care of your eye health, because we all spend, my eyes are just dying right now, spending hours and hours staring at a screen. So there's lots of little hacks like that we can do, and breaks. And I just really appreciate you all. We're at time. And I hope you continue to care for yourself and your people, and check in with folks, and thank you for doing the work that you do. And we'll talk to you later. Thanks, Adrienne and Megan and Julie.
Thank you, Paloma. I always love everything you have to say. You know that. And for everyone here, thank you so much for all your questions and just taking time to reflect on this really thoughtfully, and hope you can carry it forward and just find whatever works for you. That's the big takeaway here. We do have a 15-minute break before our next session, but I hope everyone will stick around. Let's practice what we learned, go stretch, get your afternoon water, coffee, whatever it is, and we'll see everybody back soon.